A dark industrial hive world choking on thick toxic smog, lost somewhere on the grim, cold fringes of the galaxy. The defensive lines of the Astra Militarum are utterly broken, and the surviving defenders are desperately retreating into blast-ruined trenches. The battle-worn commissar is no longer even shouting orders. He just silently grips the hilt of his humming power sword, watching with an unblinking gaze as an endless, sharp chitin-covered wave of an alien swarm relentlessly rolls over their fragile positions. The sky is completely blocked by dense ashen clouds, through which not a single ray of saving light can pierce. The exhausted and wounded guardsmen are running out of lasgun charge packs, their weapon barrels are overheating, and the heavy artillery has long since run out of shells. They have about 3 minutes left to live, and every single one of them perfectly understands this, preparing to meet their end with dignity. It is at this very moment, when the last spark of hope threatens to extinguish forever, that the heavens literally tear open. Through the thick, toxic clouds, ripping through the atmosphere and leaving blazing contrails that look like falling golden comets, heavy drop pods plummet downward. They smash into the frozen ground with the crushing force of a localized earthquake, flattening and turning the vanguard of the alien swarm to dust. The heavy armored petals blow off with a loud hiss, and through the thick smoke and roaring flames, they step out. The sons of the great angel, the noblest warriors of the Imperium. They don't just enter the battle, they crash into the stunned enemy like a punishing storm, called forth to restore order in the universe. Their crimson armor shines with unattainable perfection, every element of their war gear carefully polished and adorned with filigree carvings, as well as golden symbols. When one of the warriors fluidly removes his damaged helmet, the surviving guardsmen, forgetting their paralyzing fear for a moment, freeze in absolute awe. The Space Marine's face looks as though it had been carved from the purest marble by a genius sculptor of antiquity. It possesses perfect proportions and a pure, almost supernatural beauty, embodying a cold majesty. To ordinary mortals, this is the literal descent of deities made flesh, come down from the heavens to grant long-awaited salvation. But these mortals do not know one tiny, yet infinitely important detail. They do not suspect that right now, beneath this flawless mask of golden nobility, this beautiful warrior is fighting a desperate, exhausting war with himself. If he gives in to his ancient instincts for even a second, he will cast aside his weapon and throw himself at the enemies with his bare hands, driven by an insurmountable thirst to consume their vital essence, while his sanity rapidly drowns in primal euphoria. This is your life. You are a perfect weapon, locked in a single cage with an absolute monster, and every day of your infinitely long life is a titanic attempt to keep this cage locked at any cost. To truly understand your nature and the source of your pain, you must look to where you come from. Your homeland is Baal and its moons, a lifeless, radioactive desert. There are no shining cities, green forests, or clean rivers here. It is a world mercilessly scorched in immemorial times before the onset of the current era. Your chapter selects its candidates from the stunted and emaciated inhabitants of local savage tribes whose bodies are inevitably covered in stigmata, painful lesions, and carcinomas caused by severe radiation poisoning. Remember the very beginning of your journey when you were still an aspirant. You were a ragged wanderer covered in radiation burns whose main goal was simply to survive another unbearably hot day in the wastes, having passed unimaginable physical and spiritual trials and ending yourself in the majestic fortress monastery, you were handed over to the caring but strict hands of the sanguinary priests. You were given a drink from the sacred chalice containing the precious essence of Sanguinius himself, after which your consciousness faded and you fell into a deep, almost comatose sleep. You were carefully placed into a giant golden sarcophagus in the monumental hall of sarcophagi. You spent an entire year inside this isolated capsule. Your body, crippled by harsh radiation, was continuously nourished by complex intravenous solutions saturated with the heritage of your divine progenitor. At the same time, your sleeping mind was subjected to a continuous, intense bombardment of Sanguinius's own memories, mercilessly burning away your former barbaric personality, purifying your consciousness, and filling it with unearthly majesty. When the heavy lid of the sarcophagus finally hissed open, what emerged was not a mutilated wasteland dweller, but a perfect creation with flawless, noble facial features, ready to carry out the Emperor's will. Your transformation was absolute and miraculous. But for this masterpiece of genetic engineering, the chapter pays an exorbitant price, rooted deep in a dark past. Before the great angel took command of his sons, the Legion bore a terrifying and ominous name, the Revenant Legion. In those ancient times, when the Emperor was just beginning to unite the disparate worlds, these warriors had a terrible reputation among other armies. The Astartes possess a special implant, the Omophagia, which allows them to absorb the memory, knowledge, and combat experience of a creature through the physical consumption of its flesh. The ancient legion used this specific organ with frightening regularity and genuine appetite. To preserve the hard-won tactical skills and invaluable experience of their fallen commanders, young warriors would consume their bodily vessels in visceral rituals, adopting their memories and even taking their names. This created an eerie, maddening illusion of immortal warriors constantly returning from the dead to bring destruction once again. They were the living embodiment of terror, ruthless instruments of war, until the great angel found them. Sanguinius did not turn away from them in disgust. He taught them to aspire to something immeasurably greater, distracting their restless minds from the inner darkness through the creation of beautiful works of art. He reforged primal monsters into true shining knights. However, some cynical observers and skeptics still believe that all this titanic aesthetic labor and beautiful objects are just a sophisticated illusion, an elegant mask designed to hide the monstrous primal shadow lurking deep within each of you. This flaw, hidden deep within your gene code, has two terrifying faces that you must battle eternally. The first of these is the so-called red thirst. It is a profound genetic defect causing an unusual and often completely uncontrollable craving to consume the vital fluids and flesh of defeated enemies. In the heat of a fierce battle, when your heightened senses catch the alluring scent of impending destruction, many of your brothers may instinctively bare elongated fangs. To restrain this ruinous mutation and prevent it from completely taking over their minds, warriors are forced to regularly return to the monastery and sleep in those very sarcophagi, so that the priests can completely purify their circulatory systems. Attitudes toward this ancient curse vary greatly from chapter to chapter. The legendary Commander Dante, for example, categorically refuses to consume the vital fluid of living creatures, considering it a ruinous addiction that inexorably leads to a total loss of self-control. Because of this colossal abstinence, he constantly experiences phantom pains, and any other ordinary food tastes like dry ash to him. On the other side of the spectrum is Gabriel Seth of the Ferocious Flesh-Tearers chapter, who views this thirst as an inexhaustible source of primal strength that can and must be used as a devastating weapon on the battlefield against the enemies of humanity. There were also those who went too far in their fall. The Knights of Blood chapter completely removed all possible restrictions on their genetic thirst, leaving mountains of civilian casualties in the wake of their victorious campaigns, for which the harsh Inquisition declared them traitors and excommunicated them from the Emperor's light. But there is also a second, far more terrible and inescapable face to the flaw, the Black Rage. At the end of the dark era of the Great Betrayal, Sanguinius's shining life was brutally cut short. His agony and spiritual suffering were so immense that a powerful psychic echo of this traumatic event was forever imprinted on the cellular level into the gene code of his heirs. This anomaly is inextricably tied by invisible threads to the genetic thirst. At any moment, most often before the start of a desperate assault, a warrior's mind can shatter with a deafening crack. For him, the surrounding reality simply ceases to exist. He genuinely believes that right now he is aboard the traitor's flagship, that he himself is Sanguinius, and that all the figures surrounding him are his sworn enemies. When this break occurs, chaplains clad in void black armor perform grim chants, repaint the fallen brother's armor black, and assign him to the infamous Death Company. These lost warriors are sent into the most hopeless, suicidal attacks so they can find their end in the flames of battle before madness completely consumes their minds. To watch your brother being led away forever to this company is to stare in horror at your own inevitable future. To avoid going mad in the very first centuries of your endless service, you turn to the pacifying philosophy of art. You create magnificent large-scale frescoes, carve exquisite marble statues, and write complex poems. This painstaking process requires absolute concentration, patience, and inner harmony. By focusing on the perfect lines of a canvas or cold stone, you methodically erect an impenetrable mental fortress around your sanity. You prove to the silent universe that you are capable of creating light, not just bringing darkness and death. This is the striking contrast of your life. One day you are carefully crafting masterpieces capable of making mortal aesthetes weep, and the next day you roar down from the heavens in assault craft and on roaring jump packs, crushing enemy formations in a bloody hurricane of chains words. Your absolute devotion to the Imperium sometimes requires making unthinkable, incredibly complex tactical decisions. A striking historical example is the incident on the harsh world of Gehenna, where Commander Dante personally led the Third Company against the indomitable legions of metallic Necrons. The battle was grueling, but suddenly, as if on a single command, the Xenos executed an organized retreat, abandoning the battlefield. It was soon revealed that their overlord, the Silent King, through his cold algorithms, had calculated the trajectory of a deadly Tyranid hive fleet and deliberately used the human hive world as an attractive bait to lure the Great Devourer into a trap. When the Silent King appeared for tense negotiations, he wore, to the absolute shock of those present, a stunningly crafted golden mask that was an exact mirror image of Sanguinius's serene and peaceful face. The chapter's warriors, seeing their genetic father's visage on a metallic alien body, perceived it as unbearable blasphemy and a direct insult to their honor. The voice of the Xenos representative, breaking through the Vox static, stated that their past armed conflict was a mathematical error and proposed combining their firepower against the true, all-consuming threat, the Tyranids. Secretly, your brothers had already rigged their landing transport with a devastating cyclonic torpedo, fully prepared to sacrifice themselves, their lives, and an entire hive city just to permanently eliminate the supreme leader of the Necrons. However, Dante showed incredible restraint and foresight. For the sake of saving billions of innocent lives, he agreed to a temporary tactical alliance, even though in his heart he swore to eliminate the arrogant Xenos immediately after victory. This tense story perfectly illustrates your unique ability to suppress your boiling rage for the sake of a higher strategic good. Recently, your home, your bastion in the void, underwent its most terrifying trial in all its millennia of existence. A colossal Tyranid hive fleet, blotting out the stars, fell upon Baal, threatening to wipe it from the face of the galaxy. When it seemed that the ancient bloodline would be broken forever and the fortress would fall, a true miracle occurred. Baal fought back desperately, and the massive enemy fleet was shattered and scattered into small splinters. A huge, decisive role in this epical event was played by the Primarch Robuta Guilliman, arriving from the depths of space, having fought his way through the dangerous zone of Vigilus. He delivered into your hands the technology to create new, enhanced Primaris warriors and brought with him 35,000 fresh reinforcements to replenish your monstrous losses. Having received these formidable forces, you did not sit idle behind rebuilt fortress walls. The chapter had a new, grand-scale task to create a giant buffer zone in your devastated sector of space. You are determined to turn the surrounding star cluster into an impregnable, well-fortified staging ground, from which, in the foreseeable future, new great crusades can be launched without the slightest fear to reclaim lost territories. Thus began the massive angelic crusade, whose heavy tread continues to this day. Slowly, step by bloody step, you are uniting disparate worlds under the banner of the Imperium. During this ambitious crusade, your combat paths crossed with the enigmatic Dark Angels and their awakened leader, Lion L. Johnson. Together with him, your combined strike forces headed toward the Somnium Stars, but there you failed to stop the insidious plans of the demonic entity, Vashtor the Archaphane, and at this moment, tactical advancement on this difficult sector of the front has severely stalled. But the endless war continues, both in the cold space outside and in the dark corners inside you. At first, it seemed that the new, genetically enhanced Primaris brothers were forever freed from their father's ancient curse. But the cruel universe does not forgive weaknesses and does not believe in easy miracles. The flaw simply lay dormant in the new bodies, adapting to the changes, and soon it became crystal clear that the grueling struggle against the inner monster would last an eternity, passed down from generation to generation. Let us return to that scorched, ash-covered planet. The battle is over. The enemy swarm is utterly defeated and reduced to smoking biomass. The surviving mud-caked Astra Militarum forces look on with genuine reverence as you carefully clean your power blade. The planetary governor, whose luxurious robes have been reduced to rags, falls to his knees in the dust, offering sincere, tear-filled prayers that the heavens sent their most perfect, brightest, and most infallible defenders. They see you as the long-awaited savior, the absolute embodiment of lawless divine light, driving away the darkness. You silently turn and march with a measured step toward the waiting dropship. Your mighty, ceramite-clad hands shake slightly, not from physical fatigue after hours of slaughter, but from a furious, demanding pulsation in your veins. You take a deep breath of the smell of burning, trying with all your might to ignore that alluring, sweetish aroma of blood that drives your heightened receptors mad. You mentally return to the silence of the monastery, recalling the unfinished, elegant marble sculpture left in your secluded cell, forcing your pulse to slow down, driving the roaring beast back into its cramped mental cage. An ordinary, valiant warrior of the Imperium fights external enemies. A distinguished inquisitor hunts down heretics, but you fight your most important, most terrifying battle every single day, a battle with yourself, hidden from prying eyes, and as long as you are able to hold a delicate chisel as firmly as a heavy chainsword, as long as your weary mind desperately clings to the aesthetics and harmony of beauty, rejecting primal hunger with disgust, as long as you are ready to bravely meet the inescapable black rage, but categorically refuse to yield to it without a fierce fight, the Imperium will stand unshakable, protected by your wings. You are the noblest, most exalted heroes in the entire boundless galaxy, and at the same time, its most tragic prisoners of your own nature. And if you are destined to one day fall in battle, the light of your voluntary sacrifice will shine in the cold darkness for many millennia to come, lighting the way for humanity.